Welcome to the Catholic with a Bible podcast. This is Tad, a Catholic who, yes, reads his Bible. Move merchants on the intro music. So, what am I wanting to talk about today? Power Rangers is what I want to talk about today. Just follow me here. So, when I was a little kid, there was this TV show called Power Rangers. And I didn't know this at the time, but there's a Japanese television show called Super Sentai. Ultimately, some Americans decided, hey, if you let us use your battle scenes and we just dub our voices over top of it, we'll pay you some money and that'll be extra revenue for you. And we'll get to we only have to film half a show. And they said, sure, let's do it. Thus Power Rangers is born. And as a kid, I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. It's super corny. It is so corny. So once I got to be a little bit older, I realized, okay, yeah, we have the Red Ranger, the Pink Ranger, the Yellow Ranger, Black Ranger, and the Blue Ranger, and then whatever extra ranger they happen to have, such as the Green Ranger. And you had all these kids who would run around wearing, the Red Ranger would always wear red when he was not dressed up as the Ranger. The Pink Ranger would wear pink when she was not dressed up as the Pink Ranger, and so on and so forth. But then whenever they would even do things like, I remember seeing an episode where they were drinking milkshakes, and the Green Ranger was drinking a green milkshake. The Pink Ranger was drinking like a strawberry, a pink milkshake. And it was just like, this is so ridiculous. Why is this something that I didn't think was weird when I was younger? When I was in college, I got called out for wearing a blue striped shirt, and everyone started calling me Steve from Blue's Clues. It was one minute thing. It was just pretty minimal. But people aren't noticing that this whole squad is wearing the same colors as the Power Rangers. And no one's saying anything about it. Even if they didn't think that they were the Power Rangers themselves, they would be thinking, hey, why are you guys dressing up like the Power Rangers? But that's an aside. That's not a part of the point I wanted to get to. So really, one thing that I really liked about Power Rangers was they had all these really, really cool toys that they sold. They sold, anything from lunchboxes and all that stuff. But obviously they sold mostly action figures. So you'd have the Power Rangers with their little gun holster. They'd have, like bendable joints and stuff. And when I was, probably 3 or 4 years old, I managed to get, for Christmas, I think, I got the Green Ranger toy. This is so cool. The Green Ranger toy, he's just like the other Rangers, but he also has this golden chest plate, which is really cool. As a kid, I didn't really think too much about it. I was like, oh, the chest plate, yeah. But it kind of falls off pretty easy. And I was told, be careful, you don't lose that or you're going to be really upset. And I obviously, as a young child, didn't think too much of it. And what did I do? I lost the golden chest plate for my Power Ranger toy. And it really, really bugged me for a lot longer than I could ever honestly justify. I could be, in elementary school, I was thinking, I wonder what I would have done with that. Up to junior high, how could I have lost that? It's gold, it's shiny. I should be able to find this thing, And even knowing I had moved, it's like maybe I lost it at my friend Emily's house or something. I was trying to come up with any excuse for why I might have lost it, and I never came up with a reasonable conclusion. But even if I did, it didn't matter. It was lost forever, and it was my fault. It wasn't until my mid-early 20s that I was having a conversation with someone about this, and we were just talking about the phenomenon that is Power Rangers and the Power Rangers toys. The toys were everywhere. I mean, it's hard to even remember looking back how big those toys were. But I was talking about, I had the Green Ranger, he had the golden chest plate, and like on the first or second day that I had it, I lost it. I lost the chest plate. And she kind of looked at me for a second. She said, are you talking about the one where like you could flip his head around and it would show him with his helmet on? You hit this button and it flipped back and it showed him without his helmet? I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. She said, okay, give me 2 seconds. She stepped into the other room, came back out and said, here. And she had that exact same Power Ranger in her hand. I'm like, where did that come from? She's like, oh, I used to collect Power Ranger toys. I have like 3 of these. Here, you can have it. She handed it to me and I just stared at it. And all of a sudden, I was 20 years younger. This is that coveted thing that I lost. This is that thing that was mine. And because of my own personal stupidity, I lost it. Now I have it back. And now that thing, obviously I'm not playing with it like I did when I was a kid, but what I did do is I put it together. It's in my cubicle, setting to the side, and it's just kind of one of those things that kind of makes you feel at home, at peace. It's one of those silly things. But Power Rangers aside, today we're talking about the story of Zechariah. Again, I know that sounds like a bit of a strange transition, but trust me, it'll make sense in due time. So, as we knew, Zechariah was somebody who was told by an angel, hey, you are going to have a son. You're old, and you think you're not going to be able to bear children, but you will. Your wife will bear a son, and his name will be John. And Zechariah, he's just thinking, how's that going to work out? Not necessarily saying, no, it won't, but he didn't believe what the angel was telling him. He had doubts. And one thing I didn't touch on in a couple episodes back was, as a bit of a punishment, he was told, this is going to happen, but because of your doubt, you will be mute. You will be unable to speak until all these things come to pass. And that always weirded me out, even when I read it for the podcast episode. Like, why is he getting punished for this? I mean, it's pretty fantastical. It's pretty it's insane to know that this thing that you think can't happen, we're going to make it happen. And him questioning that seemed kind of normal to me. It made sense to me that, well, yeah, that's pretty intense. How could you just say, okay, gotcha? As we know from the story, he did pretty much exactly what I would do. I would have a hard time believing it too. But later, his wife has that son. She has him. And 7 days after he's born, and so that punishment gave Elizabeth the gift of a silent husband through her entire pregnancy. And then her son was born, and her husband still couldn't speak. They took him to the temple on the 8th day so they could fulfill the covenant made with Abraham back in Genesis. And one of the things that people started saying was, all right, Zechariah, what are you going to name your son here? He's going to be named after you, right? That's what we do. We name our kids after our families. And his wife responded, no, we're going to name him John. And everyone kind of freaked out, like, whoa, why would you name him John? Like, is that what you're really going to do? And Zechariah, who still can't speak, they handed him a little tablet. He wrote down, John will be his name. And at that moment, something amazing happened. But before I get to what actually happened there, I just want to point out that in those cultures, a name meant a lot more than it does now. And I didn't think about it very much until when I was watching the movie Pulp Fiction. The character Butch was in a taxi with a woman from Venezuela, maybe? Her name was Esmeralda. And she said, so what's your name? He said, my name's Butch. And she said, oh, what does Butch mean? And his response was, I'm an American. Our names don't mean jack. So whenever they named him John, they didn't just name him, oh, this is what the angel said, to name him John. The name actually means God is gracious, or Yahweh is merciful. And in that moment, Zechariah fulfilled what the angels required of him to do. They said, you will call him John. And the moment that he did, he was given the ability to speak. The tie into Power Rangers is when I was a kid, I had this thing that I thought was great. I didn't think a ton about it. It's like, this is my toy. It's wonderful. It's a part of my life, and I love it. And years later, when I finally got that toy back, it has a special place in my heart now for whatever reason. If I would have always just had that toy, it probably would have just gotten, tossed off to the side. I might have sold it at a garage sale. I may have just thrown it away. Because I lost it and it was given back to me, it actually meant quite a bit more. This could have been a situation where Zechariah was just told, hey, you're going to have a son. And then, 9 months later, there's your son. There wouldn't have been anything wrong with that. But the fact that he was given this punishment. So my personal view on this is he was told, hey, you're going to deal with the repercussions for this thing. And because of that, he had the opportunity for the restoration to take place. He had the opportunity to have that moment that he wouldn't have had otherwise. If he would have just had the son, like, okay, everybody, this is my son, John. All right, cool, great. But the way how it was set up, it gave him that opportunity to realize not only is this something that's true, and with those doubts that he had, he could have been told, yeah, you're going to have a son. So how? Like, well, don't worry, we'll prove it. Instead, he gave him additional evidence. He told him, here, you're going to have a son, and you're going to be mute until the moment that these things happen. Because, older people can have kids. It's not super common, but there are some of those really weird stories that just kind of happen to be there. So this is another instance of that. Here, now you are unable to speak. And the moment that he fulfilled that prophecy sent forward by that angel, he was given the ability to speak again. And that is definitely something that within life, it's pretty easy to, if you just have everything that you want, everything you need, it's pretty easy to just kind of take it for granted. If you do have loss, and for whatever reason that is restored to you, that is not something that you are owed. That is something that is a gift. And if nothing else, it's just a reminder that from the beginning, this was a gift as well. So without further ado, here's our scriptures for the day.
Luke chapter 1, verses 57 through 66. When the time arrived for Elizabeth to have her child, she gave birth to a son. Her neighbors and relatives heard that the Lord had shown his great mercy towards her, and they rejoiced with her. When they came on the 8th day to circumcise the child, they were going to call him Zechariah after his father. But his mother said in reply, "No, he will be called John." But they answered her, "There is no one among your relatives who has this name." So they made signs, asking his father what he wished him to be called. He asked for a tablet and wrote, "John is his name," and all were amazed. Immediately his mouth was opened, his tongue freed, and he spoke, blessing God. Then fear came upon all their neighbors, and all these matters were discussed throughout the hill country of Judea. All who heard these things took them to heart, saying, "What then will this child be? For surely the hand of the Lord was with him."